Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And we are continuing our staunch effort to look into the many futures and try to pick the one where we do all 27th faction focuses, rapid fire, at release for the 40k 10th edition indexes. And so far, so good. But we've had a couple of simpler ones that we've just recorded not too long back, but now it's time to get a little weird with it, John. It's time to get a little esoteric.
Oh, weird with it.
Yeah?
Like Ahriman and his boys?
Yes, like Ahriman and his boys. Don't be looking at the golden cod pieces. Don't ask any questions. We're going to be covering the Thousand Suns. And the Thousand Suns are space marines, but they are way beyond the normal cyber mutant killing machine that is a normal space marine. Rather, they fall into chaos, and maybe the weirdest form of chaos.
Yeah, they're just sand. Anakin hates them.
That you can't just call people sand and then not explain it, John. What's the fluff for this faction? Because we all know that fluff matters just as much as rules to a lot of us.
Bad joke.
What? You called them sand! You have to explain.
Well, then tell me about the Sandman.
You can't just look at someone and be like, hey, you're diatomaceous loam, and then walk away. You have to explain what kind of textile grit they are. So tell me about the Thousand Suns.
All right. So the Thousand Suns are a very unique chapter. Originally, they didn't want to fall to chaos, right? They're one of those few chapters that just, they kind of stumbled into it, mostly by their own hubris.
Mm-hmm.
They were very, very, very powerful wizards, and they delved deep into the warp and everything that it had to give them. And they dove too deep, and they started getting mutations. As mutations over time started taking more and more of their legion, until Ahriman, a character we're probably going to talk about later, came up with a ritual, and that ritual would free them all from this curse of mutation.
Mm-hmm.
And it did, in the worst way. It turned all but their most powerful of their sorcerers into sand. They're immune to the curse of mutation, because they're just sand now. But Ahriman was able to do one final thing, and that was to encase all of the sand that made up their consciousness into the armor that they are now, so they can still be Space Marines. But what's left is no longer personable, doesn't have a personality. It is just a mindless automaton that is the walking embodiment of the failure of all of these sorcerers. Showing that, like, this was the one ritual you didn't get right.
And it's the important
And you have to look at it every time.
Yeah, it's definitely...
And it makes them a very tragic story.
It's a terrible monkey paw situation. Like,
yes.
Be careful what you get for sort of deals.
Which is emblematic of, a Tzeentch faction. Which this what these are. They're the Tzeentch Space Marines. And mechanically, they're just all about magic, right? We might not have a psychic phase anymore, but they still have psychic weapons, and they have psychic abilities, and they still do rituals.
Yeah, and for me, that's the thing I think I want to talk about first, is their big army rule. For those who may be sort of like new to 40k and don't know, Tzeentch is one of the Chaos Gods. Tzeentch is the Chaos God of knowledge and magic and change. Sometimes those things happen in very different quantities all at once.
Yes. In 1,000 different futures and 1,000 different pasts.
Yes. And it drives most people to madness, but for the Thousand Suns, they can harness it. And these sorcerers are part of a cabal of sorcerers. And it's up on screen. There's a lot of text. There's a lot of it. You can read it all, but in general, the quick gist of it. Your faction is able to have something called Cabal Points. These are generated by a keyword that is on the actual data sheets down below. You'll see them in a minute if you haven't already looked. And it'll say Cabal of Sorcerers and then a number, and that's how many points that unit generates every turn. And you count up how many you generate per turn from units that are alive on the table. That's your sorcerer pool. And then you can choose to do these rituals below as you want. You can only do each of them once per turn. And then at the end of your turn, any unused Cabal points flush away. And these give you a whole lot of cool, tricksy responses to break reality and cheat the game in ways that other factions can only dream of. I mean, one of them...
It's almost like
is like, I mean, John, I can't help but look at the big one, Twist of Fate, where, like, it's 9 points, but when you do it, you get to pick an enemy unit, and they cannot make armor saving throws.
So good.
Fate turns against them in every way, and their armor just perfectly separates. For every shot you make, it falls apart, it fails, and nothing can block your shots. I mean, that's like truly the pinnacle of I break the game, I win.
Yeah, it's like your own spell book, essentially. It's like you're almost also a Cabal.
Yeah.
Like sorcerer.
And you get to sort of pick them as you need them, which I think is insanely flexible, but also game-breakingly cool, which makes sense for the Thousand Suns. But it's not their only trick. They also get to do kindred sorceries together, which further lets them react to an opponent.
Yeah, and so kindred sorceries is something that you get to use in your command phase. You basically pick one of these to affect all of your psychic attacks, right? And so you can either give your psychic attacks lethal hits, sustained hits, or devastating wounds, which all have their own varied situation that you would want to use that in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very good for this faction. It allows you to kind of take the weapon profiles for them, who already normally have like 2 options for like normal and then supercharged, and lets you choose of what you're going to do. Maybe you take the normal one with like more sustained hits to like just kind of pew pew. Maybe you take the devastating wounds one with a superpowered one, so you can try to like really take down a hard opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These combo really well off of the rituals and also off of the characters themselves, which kind of the core of the force is like the sorcerers. They're wizards.
Yep. I mean, if you're playing the army of magic men, you want to have magic men.
Yeah, you want the space wizards in the space wizards faction. Like,
that's what you're here for. And to that end, when we go to talk, like here on the channel, when we go to talk about data sheets for a faction, we don't like to cover every one of them because we can't see all the infinite futures to discuss them all. But we each can pick one that we think is representative or compelling for the faction. And for me, I mean, it's the Magic Wizard Man army. Ahriman is the one who undid it all, and I think that makes him the obvious choice for the unit to talk about to re-knit it back together on the battlefield. Yeah. He leads the force in the lore, and by God, does he do it on the tabletop also. You can see the stat line up there. He has your basic Space Marine stat line for a hero. And only an objective control of 1, so he's not really meant to like get up there and hold the objectives, but
no.
What he does do really, really well is make all sorts of spirit fingers at the opponent and make horrible, wonderful things happen. First off, he gets Cabal of Sorcerers 3, which means he generates 3 sorcerer points by himself every turn. That puts you a third of the way to your no armor save ability just by him existing.
A font of magic.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just pouring out of him, which is great. Also, while he's leading a unit, while he's leading that unit, his unit adds 1 to wound rolls, which is just, it sounds really bland, but if you have not played much, that is obscenely good. Obscenely good. And it's not wound rolls for attacks, it is wound rolls. That's magic weapons like the ones you're buffing. Very, very good. And once per battle, you could select to, you could use a Ritual of Ruin for 0 Cabal points. So if you really need that 9 cost thing and you ain't got it, it don't matter. You could just break
or like
break the rules.
Or Doombolt. take Doom
Or
Bolt.
Doom Bolt.
Do big mortal wound.
Why not?
Yeah, just like do free thing.
Do whatever you want. It's fine. And he does shockingly well in melee combat if someone rolls up on him with that black staff. And he gets the Inferno Bolt pistol and his Psychic Stalk ability, which with D6 damage can really spike hard.
In 10,000 years, I'd expect him to be able to at least know a little bit of karate. Like, it'd be alright.
Yeah, he took a couple of classes at the local YMCA. John, who would you pick?
So I'm going to go against, like, conviction here, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to pick Thousand Sun Cultists. But hear me out on this one, right?
Bold move, Cotton.
Not very tough. They don't particularly shoot extremely well.
You're starting off great.
Right? And they're not battle lines, so you can only bring 3 of them. But let me tell you why you're probably going to bring 3 units of them. So, they have scout 6 inches. So, the beginning, the deployment phase, you're going to scout up 6 inches, kind of position them where you want them. And then next is their core rule, right? It is each time this unit destroys an enemy unit, roll a d6. On a 2-up, you gain a CP. You're very likely to get that CP if you kill a unit. And then, when it's destroyed, roll a d6. On a 2-up, you get a command point. So your opponent doesn't want to kill these because they'll probably give you a command point. They also don't want to leave them alone because you could get command points. So they could pick things off and there's only a little bit left and they've been weakened by the magic, and boom, you get some command points back, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could also stack a couple of special weapons on them and go after some of the smaller, cheap chaff that your opponent might have with like some flamers. There you go. You can kill a unit that way, right? Anything they trade up and get, not only are they going to get their points value, but they're also going to get a command point out of it, generally, which is really good. What are you going to use those command points for in this army? You're going to make sure the rest of your plans come to fruition. So they make a great, unique chaff unit that your opponent doesn't really know what to do with, because they want to kill your wizards, but if they don't kill the cultists, then the wizards have much more successful plans.
Yeah, I feel like it is sometimes easily to pass over cultists in a lot of different ways, because let's be honest, sometimes they're just a little underwhelming. And here, I am pretty dubious that they're going to kill anything to get that CP for destroying a unit. But die? Oh, they're so good at dying. They'll certainly die. Sure. And the death ability, I think, will trigger much, much more often. But hey, every now and then, you do finish off a unit. Cool. Benefit.
Yeah.
I think it makes...
And I think they fit the flavor. Like, having cultists surrounding a bunch of wizards is cool.
Just meat shields.
That's
sacrificial meat shields. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's classic.
And I love that these are
fantasy
unique
D&D
cultists.
stuff.
Yeah, and they're unique cultists among Chaos. The other cultists and the other factions don't get this rule. That's awesome.
It's just for them. I love that they like tied their fate to be sacrificial lambs for their design. Delightful. Yeah. If we are pitching this to you though, and you were really into like space Egyptian wizard space marines, and this is feeling cool for you, we want to leave you with a little bit of advice. So if you go to try to play the faction or learn the faction, you've got something to start running with. And I think for me with this faction, the tip is, I mean, I wrote this out to be a little wordy, but I think I'm just going to shorten it a bit. When it comes to your Cabal points, use it or lose it. Because at the end of your turn, they flush out. They just do.
Yeah.
So really try your best as you learn to play the faction to use those Cabal points efficiently so that by the time you get to the bottom of the turn, you have none left. Otherwise, you're just leaving benefit on the table that you could get something out of if you keep an eye out. And I think that will help your units to get just that little bit more edge on the table, and over time, that good habit will bring you more wins.
Yeah. I think, for me, my tip is kind of similar. Have a Rube Goldberg machine, right? Like, have it be a little convoluted, a little crazy. You're gonna have to make some Hail Marys to, like, really make use of a lot of these guys. And that means, like, making some crazy mad scientist kind of plans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really get in the mind of, like, being kind of, like, a little too foolhardy, because it might work out.
Or it might not. And everyone might become sand.
But I think in this faction, if you don't take risks, you just lose every game. You're not extremely tough. You don't have overwhelming firepower generally, but you do have a lot of tricks, and you have enough firepower to get you there, as long as you can twist fate in the way that you need.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great place to end it, because that really does bring it home. I don't know. I think for the people who Thousand Suns appeal to, it's going to be very obvious that it's for you. And if it is, please have at it. There's all sorts of cool flavor and tricks in there that we did not touch on at all. However, if you have some questions on it, or you're into it, but you're just a little hesitant or confused, please reach out to us. The social media is linked down below, and we are more than happy to answer any questions directly that you might have if you, if you think we missed something, which we certainly did.
No, for sure.
No doubt. And if Thousand Suns isn't for you, but you're still looking for a faction to learn about or get into, look around on the channel. We've got the rest of these things coming as soon as we possibly can, and we'll be working on the others. That I can promise you. And for now, it's been all of our opinions, bona fide, and Kentucky Fried. We'll see you all in the next one.